Welcome back, everybody. Very excited about this week. We're wrapping up this year. It's been an amazing year for me personally, and I'm sure it's been an amazing year for you, our listeners, amazing people. Thank you so much for tuning in every week to the Mining Coach podcast. So this week, we're doing a wrap-up, a highlight for the year. And the reason I'm doing that is just to keep everything as super authentic and honest as I can, given my life and everything that revolves around mining and everything we do in this space. So this episode today is going to be a summary of the themes that we had during the year and all the people, amazing people that have been on the show and have shared their stories with us. We are then going to just talk about those themes. And then the other main reason for this podcast is to thank you as well for coming every week and listening, tuning in, watching on YouTube, and going on this journey with me in the Mining Coach podcast. So I just want to recap at the start of this podcast, why did we start this Mining Coach podcast? And it is captured in the very first episode, but I just want to recap that for you as well, because you have been an amazing audience. You've tuned in every week. And to a large extent, you've given us so much feedback and constructive feedback. And I'm not going to single out any of our guests or any of you, but I really want to thank you for giving us that feedback and helping me grow during this year. Why did I start it? Let's get into that. Okay. I started the Mining Coach podcast for two main reasons. Number one is just giving back. I've had an incredible 30 plus years in this industry, and I'm hoping to still be very much involved in all the aspects of mining going forward in my career and my life as well. I'm not even close to thinking about retirement. I don't believe in that. Okay, so giving back 90% of that is giving back, helping a younger version of myself, because I myself listen to a lot of podcasts every week, at least once, twice, maybe 3 podcasts a week. I tune in and I grow and I learn from people that know much more than I do in various aspects of business. And so one of the things I've learned is that they just give wonderful information for free and share their life's learnings and mistakes made. And we don't have to go through the same processes. We just can follow what they have done and learn from them. And that was the one thing about this podcast, was helping a younger version of ourselves. And the second one was networking. I realized when I was moving, call it out of the formal corporate type mining and starting a consulting business and helping mining companies and being in that service industry a little bit more as a consultant and entrepreneur, that it is important to grow your networks. And so every week I meet new people. Some people I do know, and others, every time I have an interview with somebody, I ask them, who do you know that I don't, that should be on this podcast? And that's how we get all the people to come to the show. And so that was why we started this podcast, for those two reasons. And obviously there is a spin-off from networking, that you get new business, you meet great new people, and you expand your growth and your inner circle of people that are lifting you to a higher level. All right. So what are the highlights for this year? There's 5 things that stand out for me, and there's a lot more. And we've had, I think, 26 shows for this year, 26 weeks of every week a podcast. The first thing we're going to talk about is learning, this ongoing passion for self-development. The other theme that stands out is being out of your comfort zone and taking a bit of risk. Thirdly, networking. Fourthly, taking action. And finally, being willing to work harder, be diligent, and be working smarter than everybody else, at least the top 5%. So those things just stand out for me for all the guests that we had on the show, and just this constant theme going around. All right, so let's talk about the first one, learning and self-development. So many of our guests have reached their heights in their careers and in their businesses because they have this passion for learning new things, developing new skills, reinventing themselves, and not being afraid of being uncomfortable. And it is a passion of mine that I am similar to a lot of our guests, that I just want to keep learning. The other day, I was listening to a podcast on how the medical industry is changing everything we think about. I'll give you a classic example. You know, my mom, she also listens to the podcast. Mom, thanks for listening in every now and then. I appreciate your support. But she's 80 years old, and she had a shoulder replacement this year at 80 years old. Now, think about that for a moment. Do you think that 30 years ago, we would have thought it is possible to have one shoulder replaced at 80 years old? I don't think any of us would have thought that that's possible, going to be possible. Now, what the research is indicating at the moment is that if you just maintain a reasonable amount of health and fitness, the medical industry by themselves will add 1 year to our lives every year going forward. So if I'm in my 50s now, it means that I am most likely, God willing, going to be living at least to about 120, 130 years old. And so you're only going to be winding down the last 10, 15 years. Think about it. So there's no ways I'm retiring. I'm actually starting a second half of my career. And for that to happen, I have to have an open mind of learning and adjusting, developing new skills. I've just signed up for paid ChatGPT. Now there's various views on that, but I'm learning, and I love just having this paid version of ChatGPT and seeing what artificial intelligence can do for one, and elevating your knowledge and skills in business. And I think it's no different in any other way than when we started realizing Google can help you with so many answers to questions that we have. So that's number one, having this attitude of learning that our guests had throughout their lives and still have, and they're passionate about that. How about you? And I know those of you that are listening and tuning in every week, watching on YouTube, you have that attitude. You wouldn't have joined this podcast. You wouldn't have listened so regularly if you don't have this hunger for new experiences, new learning. And thank you for that. Thank you for doing that. I want to ask you a favor at the start. Now that we have just handled the first point, why don't you just pay it a bit forward? If this podcast means something to you, and this is helping you, and you are also creating new networks through this podcast, why don't you share it with people that are like-minded? And let's help the industry by sharing this podcast. And this is not about me. It's about helping a younger version of ourselves. All right. Second thing, being out of your comfort zone. So I've shared this before, and I'll share it again. When I thought about starting a podcast, I had a chat with my inner circle, and my daughter, a young professional. She's already in a manager level for a big international company, and she is in marketing. She studied marketing, and she said, "Dad, you can't just have a podcast on the normal audio platforms. You'll have to do a YouTube channel as well." And I said, "What? You must be joking." Now, you must understand that I have not been the best of communicators for a very long time in my career. And My wife was the one that helped me to connect with people. She was the one that opened my eyes to read body language and see people's facial expressions change and see how they listen to you or respond to what you are saying. And as a result, I started developing and getting out of my comfort zone with people. So just doing this podcast was a huge learning for me. In the beginning, I realized that I pretty much have a very dull voice, and I wasn't using my voice, and I wasn't using facial expressions in that. Yeah, I would say I'm excited, but I'm not, because you can't see it on my face. Anyway, so I think a lot of our viewers, and myself included, are now very comfortable being uncomfortable and wanting to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. That's where the growth is taking place. So if you get stuck in a rut, ask yourself, am I in a comfort zone? Or am I willing to step out and learn something new and do something that I'm not used to? And that is amazing. It's an amazing experience. And I know that that's certainly one thing I want to aspire to do and be, is somebody that's continually pushing myself to be out of my comfort zone. How about you? All right. We've spoken about networking being the second objective of this podcast. And I must tell you, when I started going on my own, and we are growing the consulting company now, and it's not just a one-person show anymore, I knocked on the doors of many of my friends and colleagues, previous colleagues that have gone into consulting, and I asked them, tell me what you know and why, what's the things that I must look out for, and how do I grow this business? And without a doubt, all of them said the same thing. It's about networking. It's about putting yourself out there and network with people, going to events, going to conferences, going to expos on the mining Indaba or whatever symposium or colloquium or event is useful for you as chartered accountants, as metallurgists, as whatever profession, civil engineers, just gatherings where you can network with people and create a new network of people that will elevate you, people that you look up to, people that are doing what you want to do. And that is a theme for all the successful people out there, is that they really make a conscious effort of networking with others. All right, that's number 3. We've got 2 more to go. Hang in there. All right, taking action, the 4th one. Everything is good and well to talk about stuff that you want to do. And, we're getting towards the end of the year, and everybody's going to have, or a lot of people will have New Year's resolutions. And those resolutions, those thoughts of changing your life, nothing really happens until you start taking action, until you send that first email or do that speech or sign up for that course. Taking action, or actually, if you want to, become fit, going for that first walk around the block, or going to the gym and just doing that first set of weightlifting, or just saying no to chocolate if you want to cut out a bit of sugar. Everything that creates fruit needs seed in the ground. It needs action to take place. And our lives will be defined by the actions and decisions that we take. So the successful people out there, they live and they breathe action. And you know why? Because that's in the action is the learning. Yes, you won't get it right. I'm writing my first book, and the intention was to have it published by the end of this year. And I've moved that deadline to the end of next year. And I know that most likely the book won't be great because it's going to be my first attempt. But to talk about writing a book and never actually putting pen to paper is never going to get you there where you're going to actually publish a book. Yeah, so I'm being vulnerable here, of sharing a lot of my personal journey with you, but it also brings commitment on my end to actually do it. And if we want to be successful, we need to take action. And I want to inspire you. Don't just talk about this stuff, do it. I had a production manager at a small little mining town called Atok, and many years ago. And I had a production manager. His name is Harry van Vier. And Harry, if you listen to this podcast, or if you ever get to listen to this, this is an thanks to you. Thank you for teaching me this. On his door of his office, he had this, this placard that was put up there. It says, "Don't tell me, show me." And we make a lot of promises, but it's only the action that will tell people who we really are and what we're really doing. So, yeah, that's the fourth one. And then the last one is being willing to work harder and smarter than everybody else. The top athletes, professional golf players, baseball players, rugby players, soccer players, football, whatever you want to call it. You look at those top athletes, you look at the top business people, you look at the top entrepreneurs out there. They're willing to put in the hours. They're willing to put in the effort. They are doing what they're doing, and they are becoming the best because of the hours they put in. I think Malcolm Gladwell writes a book on, outliers, and he talks about 10,000 hours to master a particular thing, whether that's sport or a skill. Master a skill, call it that. And 10,000 hours, if you do the numbers, that's about 10 years of dedicated effort. You don't really become good or great at something unless you've put in the time and the effort. And so that's the other thing that successful people do. They're willing to put in the time and the effort to be successful. And that's why you're listening to this podcast. You want to grow, you want to learn, you want to share it. So I'm taking a break now towards the end of the year. And I also ran out of stock. I ran out of inventory of podcasts. So when I started out, I had 12 recordings done before we launched, because we wanted to be very predictable. We wanted to be consistent at giving you a podcast every week. Now, I know a week is a lot, because our lives are busy, and you're not only listening to this podcast, you're listening to a lot of them. And when you are listening to these podcasts, our lives are busy. So I also am building 2 businesses at the moment, and on a Friday is my only day that I have to do a podcast. And the people that I have are also very busy people, and so the diaries don't always line up. And so I ran out of stock. That's the truth. So I don't have enough stock of podcasts pre-recorded for a weekly launch until probably about February next year. But I have a few people lined up that's already said yes, and we're gonna record during this off period as well. And I'm very delighted that you have joined this podcast. So my final request to you is, if you like it, if you see value in it, why don't you share it with somebody else? There's also an Instagram account, and there's a Facebook as well. And if you go on the www.theminingcoach.com, you'll find the links there. Please share it with people if it makes your life better, and like it as well, so that we can get traffic there, and that we can make a difference, a bigger difference in the world of mining. Thank you so much for coming every week, and listening, and adding value to people that are in your mining lives. Enjoy your mining. Have an awesome festive period. If you are traveling, travel safe. And if you're taking time off, well deserved, enjoy that time off. Spend time with the family and the loved ones, and enjoy it. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your mining. Cheers.